what I'm saying. You guys go ahead and take a look at USC's high school. Everyone's been yelling about, NIL and USC's not getting involved and et cetera, blah, blah. Well, you look at what USC's doing now, you'll understand what Roy's saying here. You want to throw $800,000 at a nose tackle and maybe get a couple wins in a season. Most likely USC is not going to win the national championship. I just don't think that the roster is there yet to be able to do that. I'm not counting it out, but that's not likely, right? The prudent move is not to throw $800,000 at a mid nose tackle. You take that money and you invest it into a 5-star defensive tackle, I don't know, maybe from Georgia that wants to come to USC, and you start a foundation of a team that you're going to be able to build that way. I think that when the prices shot up for these guys, I think they made that business decision, and I think Roy's spot on.
Okay, let's unpack this. I think the timing of this is germane to the decision that you ultimately make, because if we're talking about December, and you think that the pick of groceries is not, Whole Foods, you think it's more like 7-Eleven, you can then say, oh, we'll bide our time and we'll wait for the spring portal. But this is the spring portal. So when's the next go round? You don't have that luxury before the season. So I think I just not necessarily disagreeing about the philosophy or even the final decision, but I would only say that the timing of this does change the calculus to a certain extent. And to Roy, and thank you for the comment, Roy, may get us an extra win or two. If those signings are worth 2 extra wins, I think that's worth it. If you're 11-1 instead of 9-3, and you get, you don't win the national title, but it makes the difference between getting to the playoff and not, I would say that's worth it. So, if it's 1 win, no, you don't move heaven and earth for 1 win. 2, that is pretty significant from where I'm sitting. So it's an interesting point with a lot of layers to it.
No, and I like that. I didn't really think about that, Matt. But what have we been talking about? We've been talking about 2 things. One, so the number one thing they want is, I believe, the top athletes, they want to get to the NFL. They have a path to the NFL, and they want to be like a first-day draft pick. So they want that development. We know that development piece is there at USC now. It's to be proven on the field, but as the drafts go, like we think they're going to go, then that's going to have to. So once those drafts start going, and you start seeing guys from USC go into the draft on day 1, you start landing these top players. That's the first step, right? But another thing also is going to be wins, like you said. That these kids, everyone wants to see wins. Know that this defense will work, because no one wants to go to a team, you're right, that's losing. So that's where it goes. But the number and the player, and it's not over yet. What's the difference between a mid-level nose tackle and a couple of nose tackles that may be a step below that? I mean, I don't know how much a drop-off is. That's what I'm talking about as far as what's your return on investment for $800,000 between a pretty good nose tackle and a couple of serviceable nose tackles. That's going to be the key. You're right. I mean, if this thing folds like a house of cards in the middle, then Matt, that's when you go, I guess that $800,000 was worth it, because now SC's lost 4 or 5 games, and it looked like they were able to exploit the middle of the defense, and the whole thing falls apart. That could be a very thing, because Lynn's defense, and I'm not saying it's predicated on a Jay Toya type person, but he did have that guy in the middle to hold the middle. And will USC have that guy to hold the middle? That's the question we have to ask ourselves. But again, these are all hypotheticals. And to the guy, I forgot his name, was talking about me saying don't panic. I'm saying don't panic now. Am I worried? Oh, hell yeah, I'm worried. But let's see how it plays out before we start freaking out over, not getting a mid-level nose tackle.
Yeah. And I want to just be very clear. I'm not disagreeing with what Roy is saying. I'm just saying that I think certain circumstances, certain particular situational details, contextual details can really reshape this discussion. It's not disagreement. It's just, I think it's good for us as a USC community, as a fan base, to kind of talk through these nuances. Roy's saying that an $800K lineman and even a top-notch tackle will not put us on target for a national title. I would agree. Okay, given where USC is, making those specific additions would not be enough to lift USC to national title quality. But I would just raise the point that, does it have to raise us to national title quality? If it is the difference between not making the playoff and, let's say, getting a number 10 seed in the playoff, and we lose in the first round, but we're in there, didn't come especially close to the national championship, but got into the playoff as opposed to staying out, like doing that, achieving that in this new 12-team playoff era, that would carry substantial value into the recruiting trail and the transfer portal, so that for Derek Harmon situations and for situations involving players much better than Derek Harmon in future recruiting and portal battles, let's recall Josh Connerly as well. If you make the playoff instead of going 9-3 and playing in the Holiday Bowl, that difference, a difference of 1 or 2 wins, probably 2, that could make the difference in terms of future recruiting results, future transfer portal results, all these things that over time they add up. And if you collect enough wins, off the field the way Oregon is, and you combine that with the quality of coaching USC has, you have the roster and the coaching, then you are at a national title level. So not right now, but for the future. And Roy makes the very salient, important point that, it's important to play your younger guys, to develop them, get them in the system, give them live reps. That is all true. But you also don't want to be conceding a season, saying that this is going to be a developing year. You always have to have your program at a certain level so that your floor as a program doesn't fall the way it cratered at USC last year, 7-5 regular season, 8-5 overall. You always have to balance those competing tensions. So again, not disagreeing with Roy, but just trying to make sure we see the various layers of this conversation.
I've said it a bunch of times. I'll say it again. It's part of the reason why I can't stand a certain school is the fact that Josh Connerly absolutely would have made a huge difference last year. If he was wearing Cardinal gold, he was playing left tackle. He had Jonah Monheim at right tackle. Believe me, what we saw on the field last year with Caleb running for his life would not have happened. But nope. I'm also good. But here's my biggest point, though, Matt. I'm not going to put Harmon and Josh Connerly in the same stratosphere. I mean, I'm saying, like, if we had an elite defensive tackle, then I'm saying, yeah, 800. You got to throw that money at him. You got to grab him. He's going to be worth his weight in gold. Please, let's do that. But that wasn't the case, and really, that isn't the case. And what USC is doing is they're looking down the line, and they're looking for the fact that they do want to land a big high school class, and now I'm going in circles, but yeah, you need to use your money efficiently. I don't think that we have an 86-year-old Nike mogul that's going to be throwing and paying way over the price tag because they can. I mean, heck, it's almost like the days where you say, you know what, we may not need him, but we could sure hurt the Trojans. Why don't we yoink him? I mean, when you have billions of dollars and not much time to live, and you want to get that national championship, you're going to do what you need to do. I don't think USC is that desperate at this point.
All right, let's tackle this really good comment from Gary from Dana Point, one of our best callers on our Friday show with Tim. Really good point here. Are we going back to have to score 40 points a game to win? So like that, really, this is a really timely question with USC not having the depth it needs along the defensive front. So it's a very natural reaction and response from Gary. Does this mean USC is going to have to outscore people? My thought is this. Well, yeah, I'll finish and then hand it over to you, Tim. My thought, Gary, is that this increases the need for USC to be able to run the ball in the Big Ten. I think that's what this really means, especially with Miller Moss, who, again, he's not Caleb Williams, where he's working within the structure of the offense. He's good at taking the check down. So I think this, Gary, is going to create a situation where short passing, ball control, passing basically as an extended handoff is gonna, might need to figure more prominently. This assumes USC does not get that difference maker at defensive tackle in the portal, and that USC enters the 2024 season without the requisite amount of depth it needs. I think the adjustment, Gary, is that USC would need to just have 8-minute touchdown drives, lots of short passes, convert 3rd and 1, kind of the way the service academies do, and also run the play clock down into underneath 10 seconds, the way the offense did in the second half of the Cotton Bowl against Tulane, and it still wasn't enough. But like USC was regularly taking the play clock under 10 in that second half of the Cotton Bowl. I think doing things to maximize ball control and minimize the exposure of the defense, that would be the adjustment, not trying to win games 52-42.
One thing we have to remember also is the fact that USC is an important position, an important spot in the football field, no doubt about it. And you're right, you're only as strong as your weakest point of on your defensive wall. But USC has gotten better all the way across the board on defense. I mean, look at almost every single position on that defense, and I do believe that there have been some significant upgrades on the defense. And we also know, like we've been living and we've been screaming, and Oklahoma fans were screaming for, is what is this guy Grinch doing? Even if Lynn cannot replicate what he did at UCLA last year, which was just phenomenal what he did in 1 year, taking the defense before the year before and then turning into a top 5, top 10 defense and a lot of really good defensive statistical categories. Let's just say he just brings us to a decent defense. And let's just say we have a mediocre middle of the defensive line. Let's just say that. We're not playing, Oregon, Washington, Arizona. The Big Ten, yes, they've got some good teams in the Big Ten, but I don't see any killer offenses that we're going. We don't play Ohio State. We don't play Oregon. Who are these amazing defenses that we need to score 40? Who's going to be putting 40 points up? I think our defense is going to be significantly better. I think that the offensive line has got to be better than it was last year. Those two factors together tell me that we're not going to be in those shootout games. When you have athletes like you're going to see against LSU, when you have a big pounding lines that come right at that defensive line of USC, when we go to Ann Arbor, yeah, those are some serious worrying points, But I didn't see. I'm sorry, I didn't see a whole lot. I'm sure Mark's going to correct me, but I didn't see a whole lot in that Penn State game to make me shake when they're when they come to the Coliseum, because we got that game at home. Is there an offense that USC needs to be like worried about? There'll be the same equivalent as like we saw last year when we played Washington or Oregon. And by the way, to remind everybody, we weren't blown out in those games, even with that defense we had last year. We weren't blown out of either one of those games. So, Mark, is there like an offense in the Big Ten that USC is going to be facing this year that we really need to? That's closely on the level of those teams.
No, there's not. That group of Pac-12 quarterbacks that we saw play last year is difficult to match in any collection, any conference that we've seen in the last 10 or 15 years. So that does not exist. Michigan's lost a top 5 pick at quarterback in J.J. McCarthy, even though they didn't choose to utilize him on the basis that Bo Nix and Michael Penix were used. And then I would not be surprised, however, if Drew Aller is a much better player this year than he was in his first full season as a former 5-star. He did have a 25-2 touchdown to pick ratio last year. They need to get him better play at wide receiver.
And the counter to, if you don't have a quarterback and wide receivers that can hurt you, you can stack the box and make him throw the ball. So we might be light in the middle, but that's fine. Then you get big in the middle. You stack the box and you make them throw out of that front. I mean, those are the things you can do against some of the teams USC is going to play. So I don't think we're going to be in 40-point shootouts, Gary. I mean, we are. It's 2 years in a row that USC thought they'd fix the defense, and they sure didn't.
Michigan lost its two best wide receivers, and they have not replaced them. Now, they may have the best tight end in college football in Colston Loveland, but Michigan's worst position is wide receiver as well. And we don't even know who's going to play quarterback. It's probably going to be Alex Orji, which is going to drastically change the dynamic of their offense. And don't expect them to be a willing contributor to the passing game if they don't have to be.
I like this one. This is just going back to that conversation. Monheim most likely will not move to tackle as much as you would want. I do believe, I don't think it's been written in stone, but there have been comments that have been made that basically Monheim came back to improve his NFL draft stock and he wants to play on the inside because that's where he projects to be in the NFL. He just doesn't have that NFL tackle frame. I mean, he's the kind of kid I bet you that if they asked him to play that I mean, I'm not speaking for him at all, whatever. I do think though that way you get around this though is you could move him to guard. I mean, you know, he's been learning when he's been playing center. He's been learning, and by the way, he'd be a great fallback. You know, let's say the center gets, you know, let's say what's the Foster, Bryce Foster. I can't remember.
Yes, the Texas A&M.
Yeah, the A&M center. Okay, so if he comes in, you put him at center. If he goes down, then you slide, you know, Jonah, who got a lot of practice at center in spring. You know, I'm sure he's gonna get some looks in fall as well. Continue to, but you slide him over to guard. Now all of a sudden, you know, those young guards can kind of get a little time. We're really, I mean, I'm very excited about the young offensive linemen that we have. But if you can, the more time you can give them to develop, the better. I mean, I'm just gonna say we got some big, tough guys, but I think that if you could put Monheim, who is just an amazing offensive lineman, it's an upgrade at guard. And if there's not much of a drop off at center, you've just upgraded your line. I mean, you know, Mason Murphy's been getting glowing reports that he's doing much better. I'm not saying that anyone's saying he's going to be the next Brad Buddy, you know, or Keith Van Horn, or even a Tyron Smith. But he's going to get the job done at right tackle, which was not getting done that right. So if you got Monheim and you have him with another year under his belt, and that right side is kind of taken care of, we know what we saw in the Holiday Bowl, and I'm really excited to see what this offense is like. I think this would really be a big answer. I don't know about you, Matt. I mean, there's still some question marks. As much as I'm bullish and excited about it, it's going to be interesting to see how the line comes here. Putting another veteran piece in the middle there, allowing Monheim to slide over and play guard and just play nasty inside, I think would be the best situation for SC. You got a lot more veteran depth that way.
Okay, I don't want to rain on your parade, Tim, but you know there is a Texas A&M College Wire site, Aggies Wire. So you know when I took note of the Bryce Foster visit to USC, I went to Aggies Wire, saw what they had to write. When Bryce Foster entered the portal, this is just Aggies Wire, okay, not me, but Aggies Wire said, you know, Bryce Foster never really fit at A&M, never really gelled, never really hit his stride for whatever reason. So, like, this doesn't seem like an instant ready to start piece. It would be more of a depth piece, maybe with a developmental aspect rather than an instant plug and play guy along that offensive line.
My understanding was he played really well as a freshman and that he got hurt and then he had some nagging injuries. That was my understanding of, but obviously they'd be a little more in touch with the situation than I am, but yeah, I'm assuming
they were not crying over his departure. Let's put it that way.
Right.
He was a high level prospect. He was a top 100 player, top 15 player in the state of Texas, top 5 interior offensive lineman. But that was, of course, his scout.
I wish I could attribute it
production on the field.
I wish I could attribute it to somebody. I can't remember. I remember reading from somewhere. I went, okay, the person was whatever I read from was like, I'm like, okay, talking about the fact that he had a solid freshman year. So I don't know. I mean, again, the guys at Aggies Wire would know more than me. I'm just saying we don't need him to be, you know, like Remington level or something like insane. You know what I mean? We need a guy that has a veteran presence in the middle, that's played center, that has that experience, right? And is going to allow us to get a little more veteran depth. That's all I'm saying. I know Monheim can play anywhere on that line.
Depth for sure. Depth for sure. Like that we need depth and bring it on however we can get it. No question. Just in terms of upside and in terms of plug and play and being a ready to go starter. I just wanted to raise a little bit of a cautionary note there.
And with or without him, again, I'm more than happy with, like I've always been talking about, with our offensive line. Those young guys aren't so young anymore. This is their second year. I am expecting, just like at almost every position across the board. And, it's not just quarterbacks. That year two, the light goes on, nothing's new to you anymore. You've got a year of weight training. You got the nutrition for a year. You put some size on. You're a year older. You're not playing against guys that, you're not just right out of high school playing against guys that are like 22 with kids. You know what I mean? You're actually, you make that leap. And I do think that a lot of these guys are going to make that jump. I just think having that, you're saying depth, I'm saying just another piece. You're right, because we now all of a sudden Lovelace is gone. That centers there's also got a little bit thin. So we'll see.
Thank you
Not
so
forgetting
much.
Kill Switch. Sorry.
Thank you, everyone, for being here at the Voice of College Football. About 320 total on the line, but quite the gathering on X/Twitter. With about 140 people here on YouTube. So just keep in mind that while we enjoy the combined audience, of course, you can make your comments and questions known here on YouTube. So please make it a point to join us on YouTube every Monday at 7 Pacific time with Tim and with Matt.